Okay, so I will share my screen with you. So I will do a presentation. Okay, today I'm going to talk about the DevOps as a service and the advantages of it. First of all, I really would like to have an interactive session if you wouldn't mind. So please, anytime you have questions, just interrupt me, ask your questions, or if you have a comments, just please go ahead and ask. Don't worry about it. So first of all, may I ask if you have any feedbacks about DevOps practices, if you are following any DevOps practices, what are the benefits you have? What are the things that you are not happy with? Would you like to share something with me first? Okay, okay, please go.
I wanted to say, as I said, that we are not using DevOps at the moment. We just use GitHub just to manage our code. So that's just about it, but we've not gone into the DevOps side of things. But hopefully we are in the process of discussing how it can actually help us, because it's taking a lot of time in terms of what we do to do the testing and to deploy our solution. So I don't really have much experience on it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for sharing. So first of all, let me tell a brief information about myself. My name is Onur Gurdamar. I'm the software architecture and DevOps consultant here in Kloya, and also AWS Cloud Architect. You can connect me with Twitter or LinkedIn, or here my email if you have any questions regarding to this presentation or any other topics. I'll be more than happy to be connected. So a very brief information about who is Kloya. Kloya is a solution provider that moves you onto a new era in DevOps, cloud, and architecture. We have experienced consultants in DevOps, cloud, test automation, and microservices environments. We have offices in London and Istanbul, and also we have a presentation in Amsterdam. And we have, I think now it's more than 8 countries, clients in those countries, so all over the world, including US and Europe. We have many partnerships, probably the most important one of them, AWS. We are AWS Advanced Consulting Partner, having DevOps competency and application modernization competency, and also tools like Venture, Tech, Zibia Labs, Docker. We have many partnerships, which we believe that we can help our customers in their DevOps journeys. So before we start, I really would like to have a brief speech about DevOps. So why DevOps? First of all, DevOps approach helps you boost your collaboration. And when I say boosting of collaboration, it's all about removing the barriers, speeding up the processes. Just consider, DevOps is development and operation, right? So actually, if we think about the old days, development team and the operation team were separate teams. But the main idea now is to make them as a one team. So DevOps team. Actually, they're product teams. And with the different departments, the collaboration is very fast, because the main idea of DevOps is automating things and make it faster and simpler. So when you have an opportunity to automate things, that means you can control it. And like I can say, automated quality assurances or quality testing, checking, or making a process automated, which will definitely increase the overall quality of your product, because less human integrated systems means automated systems. Computer cannot make any mistake if you don't code it wrong, right? So it will do every time the same thing, but humankind can make some mistakes. So they're faster and less error prone in that manner. So having, faster and automated systems definitely will help for the companies to cut down their time to market values, because we live in a very dynamic world at the moment. Every day a new technology is coming live, a new idea is being born. So you have to be fast, you have to act quick. So time to market is very important for the companies, and DevOps is one of the most important tools that can help you to cut down time to market. When we talk about automation, it's definitely have a good impact on your employees, because instead of doing repeating tasks, we call sometimes monkey tasks, DevOps mindset, DevOps culture pushes your employees to use their creativities instead of repeating tasks, because it's scientifically proved that repeating tasks are putting the mood of the employee down, so demoralize them. So they're more open to make mistakes. And just consider yourselves. There are two companies, they're paying you the same amount of money. One of them is totally manual. You have to do lots of manual tasks, repeating tasks, and most probably you won't enjoy doing it. And on the other hand, there's another company paying you the same money, and everything is automated, scripted, you can control, transparency is high. Probably you would be happier over there because you will have time to invest on yourself, look for new technologies, or just to make it better, more efficient, what you are doing. And increased satisfaction of the employees definitely have a good impact on turnover, because that means if people are happy, they wouldn't prefer going out. They wouldn't quit the company. That will put turnover value down, and which is very important for the companies just because of the know-how. We just discussed very briefly about DevOps culture, very, very briefly, because DevOps is a huge, huge subject. We can talk about hours. We are just, discussing very briefly here, and we have to understand the needs, why companies need DevOps. And before going into deeper that, we have to understand that enterprises and startups are definitely two different entities. Their needs are different, purposes are different, so their handling of DevOps is totally different. So we have to go in two different ways to understand this. Okay, first of all, we can go with the enterprises. First of all, they have silos, right? So sometimes it's impossible to get rid of all those silos. Probably you just consider a bank as an enterprise, and a bank has to obey some rules. They have many restrictions. They can't avoid them. So what do? They are just trying to optimize the processes in between those silos, because there's no way getting rid of silos. So in between those silos, they're trying to optimize the processes. Also, they have rigid processes, like they have strict rules they have to obey. They just can't get out of it. Like, again, if you're a finance company, there are some rules that you have to fit in. You just can't act as you wish. All because of those needs, enterprises are using very high-level, enterprise-level tools, which probably most of us haven't heard about it. But they need vendor support, SLAs, etc., lots of additional stuff that a startup would never need, maybe in the early stage of their lifetime. And also, for sure, most probably I can say, maybe still 90% of the enterprises have legacy infrastructure and architecture. It's not always easy to replace them. And the idea of if it's work, don't touch. And this is generally true for most of the enterprises, because enterprises are generally don't have concern of making money, because they're already making money. They have clients and they have a solution or a product or a service that's already running, and they have money, so they can spend money on this product. They wouldn't care less about okay, make it optimized, or instead of changing the system, they can hire one more person. But of course, none of these items are just totally avoidable with DevOps. We can say that because it's not realistic, but also on the other hand, it's wrong to say that, okay, enterprises cannot apply DevOps culture. They can apply, of course, not as a startup, but there are ways of doing that. For instance, let's say you work in a huge enterprise. Most probably, enterprises wouldn't prefer using Jenkins. Actually, this is wrong, I'm sorry. They prefer using Jenkins, but not the open source version of Jenkins, because as we just discussed before, they would need vendor support, SLA, and also some enterprise level plugins. Because of that, they would rather going for CloudBees. If you guys ever heard of CloudBees company, CloudBees is the company who creates the Jenkins. And when they sell an enterprise platform, for instance, they give an option for the enterprise to manage, let's say, 50 Jenkinses on a central place with role-based access control. Those kind of additional features. So enterprise would go for that instead of going for an open source community-supported version. Or another example could be Kubernetes. Let's say the enterprise decided to go on Kubernetes, using Kubernetes. They wouldn't just, install the cluster and take the trainings for them and start using it. Instead of doing that, they would go for a tool like Rancher, because with using Rancher, they will have support and they will have Kubernetes included platform. They'll have option to go multi-cloud. Lots of different benefits, because they always want to stay on the safe side. They have money, they can pay whatever they want. They just want to have support. They just want to have ability, because their processes are slow. Because of that, there are many tools that enterprises can use. If we keep on talking about the enterprises, we can talk about the DevOps BPM, which is processes, let's say, between departments, because BPM is staying for business process management. Do you remember we were talking about silos and processes in between silos? Actually, DevOps BPM is to manage the processes in between those dependencies, like departments. And enterprises have complex dependencies because every department has their own purpose, own confidentiality, own aims, own risks. Because of that, they are not so keen to collaborate with other departments because they are looking for their goals. And if you need an information or a task to be done with another department, you start to have a complex dependency. So you need a tool to solve this. Otherwise, you just can't catch the people. Okay, what happened to this? Did you check this ticket? Okay, what about this deployment? It's impossible to move on because that creates a complex release process. Did you ask Mr. X what happened to this, quality tests? Do you know if those tests passed? What about the test environment? It's impossible because enterprises are huge. they may have a pipeline which takes a day maybe, which is definitely not a good thing to have, by the way. And also, they have many enterprise tools like IBM, HP, or CA, because let's say they're using IBM hardware, IBM, maybe even mainframe, and IBM software, and they have to integrate with those tools, whatever they are developing or whatever they are using. So actually, it's a bit tricky to apply DevOps culture in an enterprise, to be honest. But of course, there are some tools like Zebia Labs or Electric Cloud. If you guys ever heard about it or used about it or have any idea, I don't know, but especially Zebia Labs is very good on handling those complex release processes. I can continue. This is a report from 2016, Gartner's report. If you ever heard about Gartner, Gartner is a global research and advisory company. They're just testing tools, approach, lots of stuff every year and creates a report. And here you can see on the leaders part, Electric Cloud and Zebia Labs are one of the most successful in the application release automation category. So Gartner reports are cool. I really would suggest you to follow them so you can have an idea what's going on in the market, what's new, who is popular, who is going downways. You can have an idea. If you don't have any questions regarding the enterprises, we can continue with the startups. So we can easily say that startups, comparing to enterprises, are very easy to change processes and tools because they are small. They don't have huge dependencies. They don't have long processes, approvals. They have to be dynamic to be alive. Because statistically, 1 out of 10 startups can move forward one step further, which means accelerate. And 1 out of 10 accelerated startups can have an angel investor. So actually, this is a huge step for startups because it's a kind of life insurance for them. And 1 out of 10 angel invested startups can have a Series A investment, which means that, okay, this is a successful business now. And if you do the math, it's all about 1 out of 1,000 startups are successful. So that means startups are by nature taking risks. And it's always better to act fast when you have the highest risk, because at the first phase of your startups, you have the highest risks. Because of that, they don't have change boards. They don't need to make long meetings to make a decision, to make a change on the product. They don't have long approvals. They don't have hierarchies. And generally, they don't need the highest paid employee's opinion for the product, which is very important because especially in enterprises, generally the managers or we call highest paid employees' opinion is very important because nobody would like to take responsibility. So, okay, he told me this or she told me this. I did this, but it was a failure. Who cares? Nobody. But in the startup, you have to be successful because it's yours. It's small, and if you want to be successful, you need to act fast, and you have to take responsibility. And of course, startups have lots of challenges, especially comparing to enterprises. First of all, they're always in survival mode because let's say you have an idea, you decide to create a company, you just start to develop your product or service, whatever your idea is. You have to survive. You have limited amount of money because you don't have any customers in the very first day, and you don't have an income. So that means you need to survive. And of course, for survive, the return of investment is the key metric. Because of that, startups have to focus on their business value. What's the business value? Their product. So creating a new feature for their product has the highest business value. So as we just discussed, we live in a really dynamic world. Every day, every single day, a new idea is, coming alive, a new technology. So believe it or not, if you are a startup and if you are trying to create a product, you definitely have some competitors out there, even if you don't know, because every day thousands or maybe millions of people are coming with the ideas. So you have to focus on your product. You have to create business value so you can find a place in the market for yourself. But you have lack of resources. This is the biggest challenge. You just can't spare, bunches of money at the early days of your startup. But if you want to do things right, you need some resources. So that's the challenge. And we will talk about it later. DevOps as a service can help you a lot in that context. And of course, one of the biggest challenges are failures. Let's say you have a meeting with a potential customer. You're so excited, you may move a step forward, making your first sale, but you have a failure because of infrastructure or software failed or something else. You cannot tolerate this. It's impossible. You definitely shouldn't be concerned at all about this. Everything must be perfect. Or let's say meeting was good, presentation was good. The customer wanted to have a trial. Perfect. You installed the application or created an account for them, but they're having problems all the time. Downtimes, errors, exceptions. It's no way they buy your product, because the most difficult thing is to get money from someone. You're giving them a service or a product or an application, whatever you promise. It has to be successful because you have competitors out there. And we talked about challenges. Let's talk about a bit startup killers. Have you ever heard about the concept startup killers, by the way? Startup killers are, let's say, the things that early age startups shouldn't do. If they do, they might be, find themselves out of the market. They might be, there might be an end for themselves. For instance, changing the programming stack. It's always easy for the developers to say that, oh, okay, it's very complicated now. It's better to write it from scratch, or a similar approach to this one. Okay, let's say you were using Java or Python. Now, I think we should change to Go programming language. Okay, that might be a good idea, but it's a startup killer, because probably you don't have even a product out in the market, or you just have an MVP, and your competitors are creating new features, new products, adding the business value. If you spend your time changing what you have already done, so it's lose of time and waste of time, and time is the most precious thing at the moment. Of course, if you have to, you have to, but it's better to avoid it. And following of hypes is a very common mistake that most of the startups do, because hype is, we call for following the latest technology or trends all the time. Let's say you have deployed your MVP, your application or website is running on AWS Elasticsearch, but you want to be dynamic. You want to follow the hypes. You just have, okay, we are switching to Kubernetes. Okay, let me ask you a question. Switching from Elastic Beanstalk to Kubernetes, does it have any business value? Any value to your product? Not at all, because end user wouldn't care about it. If it's working, you can continue. Of course, I agree. You will have benefits of making this kind of change, for sure, 100%. But you are a startup and you have lots of challenges. You are trying to survive. You have to focus on your business value. If you start following the hypes, you will never catch with your competitors. You will always left behind. You will be always left behind. And another startup killer item is software re-architecting, which is very similar to changing the programming stack. So we don't have to talk about it in detail. And also trial failures, errors on infrastructure or delivery. It's definitely a startup killer. If you are failing all the time, it's impossible to sell. And if you can't sell, you can't make income. If you don't have income, your limited resource will end one day. But maybe you can start thinking, okay, so there's an inconsistency here. You're just telling that not following the trends or hypes, let's say, or don't do the change, but also avoid having a failure because it's a killer. So how are we going to have the balance? Of course, the most important thing is staying alive. You shouldn't have any failures. But after that, your time to market should be short. You have to be agile. That's why lots of people are creating frameworks, trying to make it faster, automated. That's where DevOps comes in place. So I can easily ask you this question: should delivery be a core business? To be honest, there is no correct answer for this question. It might be different for every single one. Like you can say, yes, delivery is a part of my business. In my humble opinion, I would say, no, the delivery shouldn't be your core business because you had an idea and you're excited about it and you want to create it, you want to develop it. But if you start giving your effort on building it, delivering it, securing it, so how can you find time to develop your product? So in that case, you won't add any business value. This is my opinion. Everyone might have a different idea on this, but I really think that businesses, especially startups, have to focus on their business value. But also on the other hand, this is an important topic. So DevOps as a service is a really key item to solve this. Another question would be, does automation code include any IP or any confidentiality, let's say any sensitive information? And the answer has to be no, because I can give you an example of Netflix. You all know Netflix, like probably everyone is using. Especially it's good for in this weather, in the rainy Friday nights, weekends, when the winter has arrived. It's perfect. So Netflix has millions of end users. So you can imagine they have huge infrastructure. They are publishing their internal practices as open source. You can browse it and pull it or fork it. So does Netflix don't know that? Is it sensitive or is it risky to make it public? No, because they don't have any sensitive information. They don't store their business value in the automation code. Their business value are different, but they don't care about this. They have a team and they have a great delivery and automation scripts, but it's not their business value. So they are feeling very confident about it. And because of that, I'm trying to say that I think you have to separate your product and the platform. It's important. You have to focus on your platform. Generally, there's a rule of thumb for startups who wants to be successful. You don't have to hire a full-time DevOps engineer if you have less than 3 teams, let's say. That means if you hire a person, of course, a couple of months, he or she will work very hard, and he or she create your pipeline, manage clusters, automate infrastructure, everything. Then what? Then he or she will stop doing it because everything is done. After everything is stable, and they will start get boring and they will look for something else. So, because an engineer that has those skill sets are not cheap. So for a startup, it's really expensive. And just consider you have a limited amount of money and you want to have a perfect product, perfect environment. You hire the best engineer, you pay lots of money. After some time, he or she is done, but you can't live without him or her because you still need him, but you're paying lots of money. So this is not good, and this is a challenge for the startups. That's why it's a rule of thumb to not to hire a full-time engineer. And also, same thing applies for service levels. Let's say your application or website or product, you have to provide 24/7 availability of your service. So service disruption means loss of customer, which means loss of money, income, which is the most important thing. If you want to hire an in-house team, you need at least 5 engineers to cover 24/7 SLA. Just consider the complexity. I'm not talking about just the salary of the engineers, the HR processes, the tax you're going to pay, the office. It even, affects the office size. Of course, you can always set an on-call engineer, but it has some other advantages and disadvantages. So it doesn't feel right having 5 engineers to have an all-time SLA, right? So there must be a way to achieve this because there are tons of companies out there and they survive somehow. So DevOps as a service concept comes in place here. And you need to start, okay, why not to benefit from DevOps as a service and focus on developing the business functions to create the business value for ourselves? And if you start asking this question to yourself, you are on the correct path. I can definitely say this. So I would like to briefly talk about the advantages of a DevOps as a service concept, because we briefly discussed about what is DevOps, why do we need it, and why do enterprises need, how startups need. So let's see how we will have a benefit from it. First of all, you will have everything as code. Okay, what does everything as code mean? For instance, Terraform. Have you guys ever used HashiCorp's Terraform? Or are you familiar with the concept of everything as code? For instance, with Terraform, you write your infrastructure code. if you want to create a VPC, a subnet, even VPN, servers, clusters, you write and you just apply your Terraform, and it will create it on behalf of you on AWS, on GCP, on Azure. It doesn't matter. The best part is, because of having scripts, that means that you can read it. That means that you can version control it. That means that you'll have a backup of every single version. So there are some tools like Terraform, Kubernetes and Helm charts, Ansible, Jenkins, GitLab CI and CD pipelines, Packer again from HashiCorp, Cucumber, and Karate framework. This is important. Cucumber and Karate frameworks are for test automations. So especially for Cucumber, that means you can automate the acceptance criteria. So this is one level further. You can just automatically test your acceptance criteria. This is huge. And this is an edge case maybe, but you can even use your SSH keys with everything as code principle. Of course, I'm not talking about putting the private keys to your source code. No, you should never do that, because probably, you know, there are lots of spiders in the outside and they're just crawling all the GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, all the repositories, all the public repositories, and they're searching for username and keys, private username and passwords, private keys, tokens. And when they found it, which believe me, they do, if you search on the internet, you can see lots of examples on this. They just create a server and start, you know, mining Bitcoin, and you have no idea. And also, if you haven't created your, you know, alarms of, you know, budget alarms, etc., you have no idea. You're just paying lots of money. You just see at the end of the month. So you can use a public key in here, or if you need to use a private key, you can use a tool like Vault to inject all the secrets from one secure place. Or let's say you need to create a user for Jenkins. Instead of logging into Jenkins UI and go to user management and create a user, let's say you have a Terraform code which is creating all the network, Kubernetes cluster, and Jenkins as a Helm chart in this Kubernetes cluster. You are using configuration as code. You should go there and add a new user. And then when you apply your Terraform code, you can have it. You see, you can automate this. You don't have to do anything, and you can just get the temporary user password from a secure location like Vault, and you can email to the user, so he or she needs to change his or her password at first usage. So it's totally automated and totally secure. So everything is code is important. So the second benefit would be an iterative execution, which means generally in DevOps as a service culture, you'll have, let's say, sprints, iterations, and there are some engineers who are working with you, and they can work as a member of your development team, or as a separate platform team, or as a site reliability engineers. So it's based on you. You can tell them, okay, please come and work as a member of my development team, or just be there, be my platform team. And we'll talk about the difference between platform team and a product team. So what might be the benefits? They can provide you Git best practices, branching strategy, versioning strategy, dependency management, configuration management, testing strategy, artifact management, secret management, continuous integration, delivery, and many more. So they're experienced, and their only job is this. So they know the best practice because their job is to follow the hypes and test them and apply. So you don't have to think about it. You can just focus on your product, focus on creating business value. So they can create a platform deployment pipeline for you. So now it's, I think, good time to talk what's a platform. We can definitely say that platform is the environment that your application or product lives in. So if you have a separated platform team, that means that platform development includes all the code, including scripts like we discussed about, like Terraform, which is a DSL domain specific language, or as well as an extension code, which can be done by Go or Python, like Kubernetes operators. So here's a very simple diagram. Like on the left-hand side, let's say we have a platform team. So the customer of the platform team is your product team, which means they're creating an environment and the best possible environment so your development team can use for the product. And they develop their product, the features, and the customers of the product teams is the end users or the consumers. So it's like two different layers. So what I want to show with a very brief table what are the differences between a product or let's say business teams with platform teams. So product team has to focus on software delivery to create the business value. This is the most important thing. On the other hand, platform team needs to focus on the platform, which means the underlying infrastructure, services, everything that your software needs. So it's important, but your developers shouldn't care about the management of the, let's say, Mongo server or Redis or SQL Server. They shouldn't care about, okay, what about the backups? Should we do a backup restore test? No, you should focus on your business value. So product teams responsible for developing, running, and maintaining the application using the platform services that the platform team provides. And there's a single tricky point here because lots of people are getting confused about the dev and test or production environment of platform teams and product teams. The test and dev environment of the platform team is an internal environment, which means the product team will never access it. When the platform team is developing a new feature or something else, they do the development testing, and when it's ready to be shipped, they just move it to prod. And product teams are using only the prod environment, even for their dev and test environments. Just consider when you're using, let's say, AWS, and you want to create a test environment for your software. You're not using AWS's test environment, right? It's for themselves. You are using their production environment, even for your test needs or production needs. So platform teams, that's why a bit different from the product teams. The product teams are responsible for the production maintenance, which means the application actually, not the environment.
Excuse me, do they have,
sure.
You know, when, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Please go on.
You know, when you said they are different, Does
Mhm.
the DevOps and the CI/CD kind of thing, are they different as well?
Uh, Good question.
You know what I
Actually,
mean?
yes, understood. When I say they are different teams, I'm not trying to say that, okay, development and operation should be different. No, actually, in the DevOps culture, they have to be one team. So actually, the main idea is to integrate and include all developers into the pipeline. In of, not in many companies, but some companies can do that now. For instance, the biggest example is Google. Google lets her developers to touch production, not for all the services, of course, but the main idea should be this. That's the responsible for production maintenance. The developer can go and touch the production. In the old days, it was impossible because DevOps is started to be, developed in 2008, I believe. Before that, it was impossible. It was the system administration's responsibility. So even though the developers didn't have access, but the platform team is a bit different. Platform teams is like a supplier of the product team so they can work. Let's say they create the pipeline, but the execution of the pipeline is product team's responsibility. That's why I said a bit different, if I could make it clearer.
Okay.
Okay. So the platform teams, customers are product teams, as we just said. And there are two concepts in their responsibilities. Let's say the product team needs a Redis server, right? The platform team's responsibility is providing this resource to the product team. Let's say you are using AWS. They can use the platform as a service, Elasticache, and they can give it to the product team. This is called cloud brokerage. But let's say your product team needed Mongo. Even though AWS is a service, which is not an actual MongoDB. Let's say your platform team decided to create a Mongo on EC2 instance and to maintain them on their responsibility and give it to the product team. That is called cloud service providing, mocking actually. If we go on to the next benefit, the pipeline, because in the heart of the automation is the pipeline. Your developers need to access the feedback loop as soon as possible. And without an automation, it's impossible to do that. So that means the development team, the product team owns it. And your platform team's responsibility is to enrich it, the continuous integration and continuous delivery, and also zero downtime deployments. Come on, we live in 2019 now, so it's unacceptable for your customers to see a landing page, okay, we are having a maintenance and please come back later. It was acceptable in 90s, even maybe in the early 2000s, but today it's impossible. So they can provide you some common libraries functions like Jenkins templates, Helm charts, Docker files, or Docker images. So to make the product team's life easier, so they can focus on what really they need to do, like what they know the best. And ChatOps might be an option, which is, I think, a bit underrated because ChatOps is a great tool if you need to, let's say, get an information. Let's say you want to learn how many new customers are joined this week. If you don't have an administration portal or something, you need to go ask a person who has access to, let's say, database and check and give you the information. And this definitely slows down and gives humans some responsibilities. Instead of doing that, if you are using Slack, you can create a bot, and you can ask the bot it, and it can communicate with the necessary service and give you an answer. So it's faster. Also, I had a customer before who were using actually ChatOps as a very important step on their pipeline. Like when the developers push and commit a push to the source control, they were using Jenkins, and Jenkins were the pipeline was triggering. It was doing some steps, building, testing, and at some step, it was sending a message to a specific channel on Slack, and it was waiting for an approval. So some, of course, authorized users on Slack, with clicking a button, using a bot, of course, it was sending Jenkins a message, so it can break the pipeline or continue the pipeline. So there might be many options. Sky is the limit here. So the DevOps as a Service is a great opportunity for that. They can provide you lots of ways to use it or explain it. Maybe you can enjoy. And of course, the knowledge base. Having DevOps as a service doesn't mean that you will not know what they're doing. Because of the first principle, first advantage, if you remember, everything as code, that means everything is written. That means you can read it. And they will push it to your repository. So you own the code. Especially they're doing the development for you. And you can read it, you can apply it, you can ask, you can challenge. You are the owner. So this is very important. And also, this brings another value, because with the DevOps as a Service, you will have a proper README documents in your repositories with the diagrams, schemas, explanations. So which means you actually have a version control documents, which is like a dream. It's like a dream come true. You have documentation, and also it's version control. It's the perfect scenario. And of course, one of the most important things, monitoring and SLA. To be honest, monitoring is always a bit, how can I say, idle. The companies are not paying enough attention until they really need it. Because in the early stages, they're not planning for the monitoring and SLA because they're already so busy to create a business value. But it is very important, because when something goes wrong, it's the first thing you should check. And what are the items for the monitoring? Of course, the metrics. You can see everything with the metrics of your environment or your application. How many users, what's the bandwidth, what's the CPU usage, okay, how many customers are subscribed, anything, whatever you can imagine. And logs. When something goes wrong, the first thing you should do is to check your logs, because it gives you everything, like an X-ray of your application. And also distributed tracing. If you are using microservices, that means you have loosely coupled system. So there are no solid links in between your services. That means you need a distributed tracing. This is a total different and detailed topic, but the good part is DevOps as a Service can provide you distributed tracing, which is very useful. And you're collecting the metrics, you're having the logs, distributed trace outputs, but you have to make it understandable, right? Meaningful. So you need to use a tool like OpsGenie or PagerDuty, so you can collect all of them with those, and if you need, you can escalate to the related engineer. The DevOps as a Service can provide you this, and which is very important, because then you don't have to deal with those kind of stuff. You don't have to think. You don't need to, give your effort on this. You can focus on your business value. And of course, they will provide you site reliability engineers, which means in the best practice, a site reliability engineer should write a code in his or her 50% of time. So which means they know your product, they know your application. So they're like a part of your company. It's important.
Sorry, what's SRE?
Site reliability engineers. Site reliability engineers.
What does that mean?
It's just like a platform developer, but they also write codes for your application, and they are responsible for the, let's say, optimization of your services with doing the engineering on the service levels, or SLAs or SLOs, which is service level objectives, service level agreements, and service level indicators. There is a very good article of Google's on this, because SRE is Google's approach. They first came with this idea. It's a very good concept. It's all about knowing your application, knowing your services, and optimizing based off the needs. Let me give you an example. Let's say you have a service A, which must be online all the time. I mean, how can I give an example? Let's say Gmail, okay? Gmail has to be online all the time, right? So Google is spreading it to all world. It's using its resources on North America, South America, Europe, Asia, everywhere, because it has to be alive all the time. Or Google has another service. I don't know, I'm just giving away now. Let's say translate service. It's not that important. So they can just use high availability within a region. That could be. So the site reliability engineers, one of the responsibilities is this kind of decisions.
Okay, what does that relate to the auto scaling in the cloud technology? How does that relate to?
Not necessarily auto scaling. It's actually a bit deeper than that. But of course, this is a part of it. But generally, a platform engineer can manage your auto scaling. Site reliability engineer is a bit higher than that. Just consider like seeing the big picture and makes the decisions on base of this. Of course, if you're a startup, you won't have a platform team, site reliability engineer or architects, etc. Let's say you have one guy. This one guy can do all for you. That's why, to be honest, I personally support the service like DevOps as a service, because then you have options.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
No worries. And lastly, security, DevSecOps. So it's important because there's different aspects of security, like CI. Security in CI, security in CD, or security in runtime. So there might be some code level checks, dependency level checks, CVEs, which stands for common vulnerabilities and exposures, Docker images. So your pipeline can do all those checks and decide to break the pipeline. So this is important. Or security in delivery, like automated penetration tests. So penetration tests are hard to organize, but if you can automate them, it's the best value. Every time you push something in the delivery, it's been testing. It's perfect. And of course, in runtime, in the container or in the host, it's very important. For instance, I forgot to mention in CI with Docker images, when you are using a base Docker image, the pipeline should check your base image security vulnerabilities, and if there is a leak or vulnerability, it should break the pipeline because it directly affects your security. So security is important, and at the early stage of the startups, most of the developers, to be honest, because I did 16 years of development before, and developers that tend to go on the easy way. Like instead of using the least privilege, using the admin accounts, or they can be a bit. They can have actions a bit risky. So if you want to be in the safe side, using a DevOps as a service kind of service is perfect, because then that means you are controlling yourself, which is important.
Okay.
And as a conclusion, startups should prioritize their focus on business functions development rather than day-to-day changing DevOps tools and practices. As we all said, the business value, new features, the product itself. To be honest, DevOps as a service is more suitable for startups, not for enterprise. Of course, they can still have benefits, but it's more suitable for startups. That's why I was talking more about startups. So they should focus on their business value instead of day-to-day changing operations or tasks. Also, DevOps as a service can bring great efficiency for early stage and growing startups, because you have accelerated and you still need to focus on your product. And a team, an experienced team, is taking care of your security, your delivery, and everything your development team needs. So it's a great advantage for early stage and growing startups.
Mm-hmm.
And lastly, if you are interested with DevOps as a service concept, if you want to learn more, you can visit our website, our microsite for this. To be honest, you can find lots of information over there. We have a short, cute video also to make it a bit funny. Please go check. If you have any questions, I already gave you my email, Twitter or LinkedIn, or from our website, or from our Twitter account. You can always ask any questions to us, guys. Don't hesitate, please. And if you visit our blog.chloe.com, I'm pretty sure you'll find lots of useful things for yourselves. We would be more than happy to keep in touch. If you have any questions, I would be more than happy to answer. If not, thank you for joining us today.
I just wanted to ask the question roundabout. When
Sure.
you're describing all the tools, I wanted to see, in terms of, like, in your experience, what are the best ones to actually say, oh, this is the best that you can actually focus on? I mean, the best I know it's very difficult in terms of technology, but just
Are you using for the tools?
Yes.
To be honest, it's impossible to say this is the best tool, because there are many tools that can do the same task for you. And in some project, tool A is the best option for you, and in the project B, tool X could be your best option, because all of them strengths and weaknesses are different, and it's all based on your project needs and also your experience. To be honest, we generally use, let's say, Terraform for infrastructure as a code instead of CloudFormation. But we're also using CloudFormation in some projects when we need. But if you're asking me why Terraform, because it's easier, and also it's more adaptive. For instance, when AWS first announced EKS, that's a Kubernetes service, managed Kubernetes service on AWS, Terraform was way quicker than AWS to implement it on Terraform modules. So we started using it with Terraform. After 1 or 2 months, we could start using it with CloudFormation. This is an example for this. So tools may differ based on your needs. We can talk about it later. If you have a specific situation, you can ask. Then we can talk about the possibilities if you want. But it's very hard to say this is good or this is bad because every tool is different.
Okay, I don't have any specific. It's just like in terms of what they request in the market. Because when I joined the organization I'm working for now, we started using the Azure ARM templates. But 2015, there's so many. Azure didn't support it going forward in 2017. So some of them, there's still some that you can use as an ARM template, but some you just have to do another workaround. So we do a lot of T4 and stuff. The C# T4, there's some guys that do that. But like now in terms of like, if you now want to go into that cloud, because we are based on just Azure, they don't want to go into AWS world. So like, okay, what tools can you use?
To be honest, if you are using about the cloud providers, AWS is the leader of this because it actually it was the first provider that gave us those possibilities, and after then Microsoft with the Azure or Google with the GCP or with DigitalOcean or many IBM Cloud, Alibaba Cloud, there are lots of cloud providers at the moment. But with the feature set, with the stability, AWS is best. To be honest, we have many customers that wants to switch from Azure to AWS. But
because
yes.
Maybe I should focus my learning on that, on AWS then, because I just started into Azure like 12 months ago. So because I've been more BI developer, but then there's no job, so I had to learn Azure and Azure was easier for me to learn anyway because I come from a Microsoft background.
Yes,
makes sense. Azure was much easier for me to relate to. AWS was like a monster. And I couldn't afford training. So
more or less,
more an easier path.
All the mindsets are similar. GCP's mindset a bit different, but especially Microsoft Azure and AWS is so similar with each other. Of course, anytime you can switch to AWS or you can continue with Azure. It's all up to you.
Oh no, I will drop you an email later so that we can sort of like have
Sure.
I think my plan was to spend this year on Azure, the next year on AWS. But I'm still in my learning path, and I was so busy at work as well. But this is good because it's quite informative for me. I didn't know DevOps is this big.
Yes, exactly. Because even Microsoft or Amazon or Google is investing a lot because in the last year I read about an article that lots of companies, I don't remember the ratio at the moment, percentage, but are just going to cloud. So they're just going from on-prem to cloud, and because it makes sense. It's easier, it's cheaper, it gives you more possibilities. So it doesn't make sense to have old school hardware and on-prem. It's hard to manage and expensive.
Oh, yes, you're right.
Okay, thank you very much for joining today. I hope you enjoyed.
I did enjoy it. You've made some, like some things that I've been struggling with. You just clarify it. That you can see that I've been quiet just because I'm digesting all the things that's so confusing when you're reading it.
Perfect. I'm so glad. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Good. Thanks for organizing this.
Okay. Our pleasure.
Going, but
okay.
Well, it was quite good.
Okay. Thank you very much, and good night. We hope to see you in the next event as well.
Oh, sure. Have a good weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.